All right, everybody. Vocab. Vocabulary is what we are doing. This is vocabulary for chapters 22 and 23. It's Aorist week. I know that sounds kind of weird, but there is something about this week that, like, there's a lot that we have to get together and learn. And so, vocab is a big part of this. And we're going to be learning some new verbs. We're also going to be learning how some of our older verbs are behaving as aorist. So let me make myself a little smaller, get out of the way so that we can do some vocab. All right, there we go. All right, so we're in chapter 22, the vocabulary in chapter 22. If you want to follow along and make notes in your own book, we're on page 245. And so our first vocabulary word is apathnesko. Say apathnesko. Now, apathnesko, check this out. It is an isk verb. It means I die or I'm about to die, apathnesko. Apathnesko is an isk verb. You can see the iota sigma kappa there, that iota subscript. The stem is apathon. And look here at our third verb. So we've got the present tense, the future, and the aorist. Notice that it is apethanon. Say apethanon. So apa and then thon, and that means I died. I died. So apethanon. So notice that from apathnesko. Okay, I die. All right. Artos. Artos means bread or loaf or food. Ha artos. It's a masculine noun. Okay, bread. Artos. All right. Balo. Say balo. Balo is I throw. We already talked about balo, I throw, and ekbalo, I cast out. Notice balo, as we noted with the future and with the aorist, both change their stem to ball with one lambda, and then there we can see how balo goes from two lambdas there in the present, the imperfect, the future, it's a liquid, and then ebalon as an aorist, you can see later on as a perfect. Blay is the root as we move into the perfect, and then the aorist passive is blay as well. So, but there you go. That's balo, I throw. Ball, I throw. How hard is that to remember? Balo. All right, you're welcome. Okay, gay, say gay. Gay, hey, gay, the earth or the land. Sometimes if in a Hebrew mindset, like haaretz, the land will be hey, gay. So gay means land or earth or region. There you have it, 250 times. What does he say there? Oh, like geology. Geology, geocentric, earth-centric, something like that. Okay. Ginamai. Say ginamai. Ginamai is I become, I am, I exist, I am born, I'm created. It's basically ginamai is I. It's not a to be verb particularly, but it can behave like that. It can sometimes take a predicate. But notice that ginamai, that the root is gen, and that happens in the aorist. So ginamai, gin. When you move to the aorist, it is a genomain. And also notice that the aorist form has middle endings, which means it's a middle only, and it's deponent, okay? And that is an aorist. So genomai takes a predicate nominative like a me. Genomai has a wide range of meanings. To come, people to think in two categories: to be or to come into being. Yet most uses fall into one of these two groups. There we go. So gen, not to be confused with genao, which means to beget, which has two news on it, and is a contract verb. This is ginamai. So sometimes ginamai and genao can be confusing. Okay, let's go down here. Look at ace erkamai and ex erkamai. Ace erkamai is to come in. Ex erkamai is to go out. They are both use erkamai as their root. And erkamai with its stem, look at erkamai in the aorist is aelthon, and this becomes ace aelthon here. Ace aelthon and ex aelthon. Okay, so erkamai changes its root to elth or eluth as it moves into the aorist, and you can see that it occurs quite often. All of these occur quite often. Look, 218 times for ex erkamai, 194 for ace erkamai. So It happens a lot. Very useful word to have memorized. Okay. Let's say this. Eti, still, yet, even. Here's another verb. Heurisco. Notice this is a rough breather. Heurisco. To find, I find. And this is where the word eureka comes from. Eureka, I found it. And so heurisco, notice how heurisco, again, another isk verb, and oftentimes that isk is going to drop out as we move into other tenses, and that happens here with the aorist. Huron, say Huron. So heurisco becomes Huron as an aorist. There we go. Lambano is I take or I receive. I always remember this because I think I told you guys the lambada dance, and you have to take lambada lessons in order to learn the lambada dance. All right, forget it. But notice lambano becomes lob. The aorist form of lambano is elabon. And so recognize that and know that that lob is the root as we move forward. And even as we move into the aorist passive, it's lamb. So there you go. All right, keep going. Uta, and not, or neither or nor. Uta, and not, neither or nor. And then another erkamai verb, pros erkamai, to come to. Erkamai, it behaves the same way, whether it's erkamai, ace erkamai, ex erkamai, or pros erkamai. Aelthon is the aorist form, pros aelthon. Again, notice these dashes are there because that verb does not occur in that tense. So it doesn't occur in the future, it doesn't occur in the perfect passive, and it doesn't occur in the aorist passive. But here it is as an aorist, active. Okay. Pros erkamai, not to be confused with pros eukamai. Pros eukamai means I pray. Pros and euk. Notice how pros eukamai, this is actually a first aorist. Check it out. That saw tense formative. So euk, when the saw tense formative interacts with that chi, it will become a kasi, and it is pros euxamein. Pros euxamein. So notice you can't see the saw tense formative here, but it's there. Okay, let's keep going. Finally, pur, say pur. Ta pur, the fire. So like pure or purify or purgatory or purge. These are all about pur, fire. Okay, that's how you would remember pur. Okay, this is chapter 22. I'm going to move over to chapter 23 and let's move over to chapter 23. You can look at in chapter 22.18 some previous words. We're going to actually walk through those in the next section. So 23, so we move over there into the vocabulary. Vocabulary for chapter 23 begins here. Okay. We've had erkamai, we have had ace erkamai, ex erkamai, pros erkamai, and now op erkamai. I depart. Okay. Now that's 5 verbs, but that's only really one verb that you have to memorize. You just have to know the prepositions and erkamai. And so again, op erkamai becomes op aelthon. Okay, aelthon is the aorist form of erkamai. Here's our stem, eluth. Eluth becomes aelth, and that becomes the aorist form. It means I depart. Okay, so to go from, to depart. Okay, all right, arkamai, say arkamai. Arkamai means I begin. Arkamai means I begin. Notice that arkamai is a middle only deponent in the present, and it is also a middle only in the aorist. It's a first aorist. Notice here that arc, that key, it interacts with the saw tense formative, becomes a kasi, and it has these secondary middle endings, main. Er, erxamen. Erxamen. Now again, notice like it's if you don't memorize this, it might be difficult to recognize that the stem here is alpha rho key because you can only see the rho. You've got to recognize that this is a saw tense formative in there. Okay? Archimai means I begin. Okay? Archimai begins. Arche means head, like arche can mean head and mean beginning of something. Okay? All right. Grapho. Grapho. Grapho is I write. I write. Grapho. Notice grapho here as an aorist is a first aorist. That phi becomes a psi when you get the sigma alpha tense formative. A grapsa. Okay? All right. Dia. Say dia. Therefore, for this reason. It's a conjunction. Let's do the next one. Doxadzo. Doxadzo. So doxa is glory. Doxadzo is to glorify or to praise or to honor. And doxadzo is a first aorist. Doxad is the stem, but that delta is going to drop out when it has the sigma tense formative there, sigma alpha tense formative. So edoxasa, that is the aorist form. Doxadzo, I praise. Okay. Dunamis, dunamis. Dunamis means power or miracle. Got to stay caffeinated. Dunamis means power or miracle. Yeah, dynamite. This is the exegetical fallacy that dunamis, the power of the Spirit, is like dynamite. Well, that's not really the case. Dynamite gets its name from dunamis, but dunamis simply means power, not an explosion that destroys things. That's not it. Okay. All right. And that's a feminine word. It's and it has a that iota, that consonantal iota ending. So it's a third declension, and the genitive ending instead of omicron sigma is epsilon omega sigma. Okay. All right. Keruso. Keruso. Keruso is I proclaim. So the preaching, it's I preach. You might have heard of the kerygma. The kerygma is the preached message of the New Testament. There you go. And kerygma, kerug, is the stem of keruso. So when you have kerug, and then you get a sigma alpha tense formative on there as a first sigma, it becomes ekkeruksa. Ekkeruksa. So say that and recognize that this is the aorist form of keruso. Ekkeruksa. Okay. Pino. Say pino. Pino is I drink. The stem of pino, the root is pi. And so pino becomes epion. Epion. It's a second aorist. So it does not have a sigma alpha tense formative. It just drops that new out of there. And then you have your second aorist. Okay. So those are all the new vocabulary words. And what I want to do is I want to walk through previous vocabulary and how this works. Our previous words, here are all the verbs you've learned so far, including verbs in this chapter. And so we have regular, and basically what we're looking for is we're looking at what we learned, the verb, the way we learned the verb, and then the various ways it looks in the future and the aorist. So akuo, I here becomes a kusa. Apokrinamai is a liquid aorist. Apokrinamane. Okay, and it is also it's also a middle only as an aorist. Apokrinamai. Dunamai does not occur as an aorist, believe it or not. Thelo is ethelesa, a first aorist. We got the saw tense formative there. Remember that the stem of thelo is actually ethele, and so we see that happen there with thelo. Luo, elusa, pino, epion, pistuo, epistusa, first aorist. Paruamai does not occur as an aorist. Contracts. Here's a beautiful thing about contracts. All contract verbs, okay? All contract verbs are first aorists. So all contract verbs will take a sigma alpha tense formative, which means that their contract vowel will lengthen before the tense formative. So agapao becomes agapesa. Akalutheo becomes akaluthesa. Genao, which means I beget, not to be confused with ginamai, but genao becomes eganesa. Notice that ginamai will become gen with one nu, and genao always retains those two nus. Okay? Erotao becomes erotesa. Kind of an interesting thing. You don't really see the augment there. It's an irregular augment. Eperotao becomes erotesa. Oh, I wonder why that should be an eta, but okay. See, is that in the book as well? It is. Okay. Zao becomes edzesa. Zeteo, edzetesa. Anyway, you get the point here. Kaleo, laleo, peripateo, plerao, poieo, proskuneo, tereo. So those are all contract verbs, and they're all first aorists. Okay, stems that end in a stop, again because of the sigma alpha tense formative. So we saw arkamai becomes erksamein. So that's a middle only as an aorist. Blepo, eblepsa. Grapho, egropsa. Didasco, edidoxa. Echo, the stem is actually sec, and so eskon is actually the aorist form of echo. You're going to see that quite a bit. Echo and eskon. Proskuneo, look at the aorist. It is actually a middle only as an aorist. Proseuxamein. How about that? That's a mouthful. Proseuxamein. Prosukamai becomes proseuxamein. Okay. Sunago. Sunegagon. It's a little bit of an irregular there. Sunago. And then these are the most difficult. These are the verbs that have a different stem. We have the erkamai family. Erkamai goes to eluth, and the aorist form is aelthon. Notice that aelthon shows up. Aelthon, aelthon, aelthon. All of these erkamai family verbs all behave the same way. So erkamai, operkamai, acerkamai, exerkamai, proserkamai. Okay. Lego has three different roots. Lego as the present tense, arrow as the future. It's a liquid future. And then he puts weed but ip seems to be the stem here. Apon is Lego. So Lego I see, arrow I will see, apon I saw. All right? You have to memorize these various forms. Okay? Oida does this as well. Oida is a perfect technically. Anyway, you don't see this as much, but just to know, oida I know, and I knew. Okay? Harao is similar to Lego. Harao I see. Opsamai I will see. And then adon is the aorist form. And the way I remember this, again, is id is the stem, and id, like video, is I saw. So harao I see. Opsamai I will see. Adon I saw. You can see how liquids behave. Iro, apokrinamane. Notice that apokrinamai is also a middle only as an aorist. Apokteno becomes apoktena or tena. And you just have that alpha. You don't have a sigma alpha because these are liquids. All these liquids have that alpha, except for if a liquid is a second aorist like balo or ekbalo. Agero, crino, meno. You can see how those deal. And then your apathnesco becomes apathanon, baptizo, ebaptisa, ginamai, egenamen, gnosko, egnon. Gnosko has a unique thing too. It's third plural. You can look in back in chapter 22. It's third plural, 22.19 on page 248. Its third plural is egnoson. It actually takes a third plural. It's a second aorist, but it takes a third plural first aorist ending. So egnoson is the third plural ending, but so it behaves a little bit strangely. You can take a look at that. Then we already talked about doxazo, heurisco, keruso, lambano. Here's sodzo. Sodzo is also an idzo here. And esosa, I saved. And so that gives us a sense, that gives us kind of a walkthrough of all these. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of a, with the quiz, I'll give you the quiz on chapters 22 and 23, but I'll also give you a little bit of a diagnostic where you can go through and identify which verbs are first aorists, which verbs are second aorists, and we can kind of have some conversation about that. But hopefully this was helpful as we walk through the vocabulary for chapters 22 and 23.